Hey Gemini, this is Katie Sweetman with Empowering Astrology, and this is your look at the astrology of March of 2021. Let's get to it. So, big news this month. You have Mars going into Gemini. What does this mean? Well, Mars is the kind of the get up and go of the sky. It's action. It's moving forward. It's somebody who takes the lead. It's that type of energy. Well, it's going to be in your sign until April. So you're going to possibly have a lot of action, a lot of drive, a lot of motivation as you go into March. Now, March is Pisces season. It's normally the time when we rest. It's normally the time that we recharge according to sort of this zodiac calendar that we go through. But you might find that March is anything but rest. In fact, you might have found that the past 2 months have been rest as Mars moved its way through Taurus from the 6th of January until the 3rd of March. So what do you do with all this energy? It needs a channel. It needs physical activity. It needs to go for a walk, needs to go for a drive, needs to move around. You might have a lot to say. Mars doesn't sort of hold back with what it has to say, what its opinions are, especially when it's in Gemini. You also might just have a lot of restless curiosity. So again, give this energy somewhere to go. Maybe you're writing, maybe you're speaking, maybe you're getting on video like me and saying things. Do keep in mind that when Mars is in this part of your chart, you're more singular, like individualistic. So it might be a time when you're not maybe being the most diplomatic person. I mean, for better or for worse. So do know that you might have some back and forth with people, and how do you try to find the balance? But maybe you do need to kind of find your courage and bravery at this time. That said, it's Pisces season, as I was saying earlier, and with the sun in Pisces until March 20th, the focus right now is on your professional life, because Pisces is your sign of career, direction, the responsibilities that you hold in this world. And this is the natural time in your zodiac calendar for there to be some sort of movement in your professional life. Maybe there's a new job, maybe there's a career change, maybe there's just more responsibility. With Pisces as your career sign, there's on some level you have to do what you love. You have to do something that you feel is offering something to the world, because Pisces is a very altruistic sign, at least on paper. It's a sign of compassion, it's a sign of forgiveness. It's a sign that sort of understands that on some level we are all connected. I sort of say this as a refresh for what sort of energies you're naturally working with in your astrology. So when we have the Pisces New Moon on March 13th, that this is your time in your personal calendar to maybe set some new intentions about what you want going on in your professional life, or the type of responsibilities that you need to kind of take on, or maybe the altruistic things that you want to do in the world. The new moon opens up a 4-week period, which takes you into April, where there, as I was saying earlier, there may be a job change. There may be something going on in your professional life. It's important to note this. So this new moon is at 23 degrees of Pisces. That is the same degree by square to the solar eclipse we had on December 14th at 23 degrees of Sagittarius. Sagittarius is your relationship sign, so it tells me as an astrologer that there's a lot going on in relationships with you. All relationships, not just romantic relationships. So this new moon makes what's called a cross to that lunar eclipse. It activates that lunar eclipse. So this may be a time when, even though we're talking about career, we're talking about direction, something might be going on in your personal life, especially around relationships. So that's something to keep in mind. This is activating eclipse energy, so it may mean that the middle of March, there's some twists and turns. Eclipses, they sort of close the act of one chapter and they open the act of a new chapter. With the opening of a new act, people come in, people come out off the stage, so to speak. There's new set pieces, there's a new story that comes up, and sometimes dramatically so, all metaphorically of course. So there's that new moon, and then Mercury, your planet, leaves Aquarius, where it did a lot of time. It sounds like doing time like in a jail. It did a lot of time in Aquarius, going back even into, I believe it was like the 30th of January. So when Mercury was in Aquarius, it was a very analytical time. It was a very big picture time, a time when you were sort of expressing your viewpoints, thinking about the world and travel and what your convictions are, maybe even standing up for what you believe in. But when Mercury goes into Pisces on May 15th, Pisces is a very different sign. It's more intuitive to Aquarius's analysis. So you might feel that difference as you kind of cross into the second half of this month. It's no longer sort of looking out, zooming out, and getting the bigger picture. You're feeling more. Pisces is a sign of compassion and forgiveness, intuition, feeling all the feelings. And you're like, great, just what I wanted, Katie. Sorry. But as I said earlier, Pisces is your career sign. So you got that little burst towards the second half of this month where you are focused on your professional life, your ambitions. And sometimes I get the question, well, I can't work, or I've retired. But, maybe you're thinking of new initiatives or things you need to take responsibility for, because this part of the chart ultimately has an air of Saturn, so to speak. And Saturn is always pushing us to take steps up in our life. So you could say, well, on some level, even if this time isn't about career for you, it is about taking the next step up in your life, regardless of what age or what circumstance that you have right now. As we go into the last week or so of the month, the sun crosses into Aries on March 20th. So when the sun goes into Aries, it's a start of a new season. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's the start of spring. It's the start of the astrological year. Aries is the first sign. For you, Aries is your sign of community, friendships, social connection, your professional connections, your personal connections. Maybe this is kind of bigger question of where do you belong? And with Mars in your sign, Gemini, maybe there's a lot of interactions, a lot of socialization, of course, safely, as one can do these days. Maybe it's a lot of Zoom calls. But this, Aries season is a time to sort of get out in your community, to make connections, to focus on how you are connected to the greater whole. It's also a time for you to think about big picture stuff, like what do you want that next year to look like? I mean, I know we're a few months away from your birthday season, Gemini, but you're sort of getting to the part of the zodiac calendar where it's asking you, like, all right, what are your ambitions? What are your goals for the next coming year? Where do you want to see yourself by this time next year? The next day, on March 21st, Venus also goes into Aquarius. Maybe that will kind of help smooth over any ruffled feathers, because Mars is in Gemini, and Mars, when it's in your sign, can be a little bit pointed, because like I said, Mars got that Aries energy. Then as we go, speaking of diplomacy, we go into the end of the month with a Libra full moon on March 28th. Now, this full moon will be in your sign of self, meaning it's going to highlight identity, how you express who you are, your creativity, and maybe even children, if children are relevant to your life. And just side note, if you want to get pregnant, having a full moon in this part of the chart does sort of say, okay, it's time to focus on that activity. It's also a time to focus on romance. And so you might be kind of thinking about, on a more bigger level, who are you? How do you express who you are? How do you share your identity? And then, of course, this time of play, time of creativity, time of leisure. But this full moon has Venus over in the sign of friendship and connection. So maybe there is this tension that's happening between how you express who you are versus the expectations of community or the expectations of friends, and sort of how do you assert yourself, how do you individuate, but then how do you still try to maintain friendships? Venus, the ruler of that full moon, will also be conjunct Chiron. So there's a little bit of a pain story that's wrapped up in this full moon. You're thinking like, wow, why is there a pain story? Well, Chiron is a planet that talks about some sort of pain and suffering that we all carry. You know, we're human beings. We all have something that makes us suffer. It could be a lack of self-worth. It could be a lack of belonging or trying to find our people in the world. And so maybe there's this sort of deeper emotional, spiritual, psychological button that gets pressed with this full moon. It's like, am I safe to be myself? If I am myself, will I be accepted by my community, by my peers, by my friends, or will I be rejected? You know, maybe with this full moon, when Mars is in Gemini, you're feeling more assertive. You're feeling like, no, I have to be myself. I have to individuate. But it might bring up past emotions, past memories, but also something that requires you to be very brave and courageous, because I think that at the heart of Chiron and Aries is having to overcome a pain around courage and bravery, a pain around needing to move forward in life. So that is your look at the astrology of this month, Gemini. Again, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm with Empowering Astrology. You can follow me online, empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Instagram, IGTV, Empowering Astro, Facebook, Twitter. Book a session with me. So enjoy your month, Gemini, and until April, take care. Bye.